to the post game. What a win. What a big, big win. Rockets knock off the Pistons, the number one team in the East, 111 to 104 tonight. And to say this is a shock is probably an understatement. The Rockets, the way they played in Philly and the way it looked defensively, for them to come out and pretty much contain the Pistons tonight, shut them down from three-point range, and so many positive things came out of this. Kevin Durant, 32 points, I believe he finished with tonight, was just terrific. Did not have a single turnover after 8 turnovers against Philly. Jabari had that terrible game, made a bunch of winning plays tonight. Reed Sheppard getting closing minutes, an abysmal first half for Reed, just like last game, and then a really good second half for Reed. Again, very similar. And Amen Thompson, just basically the unheralded hero, really has been terrific on ball. We're going to talk about all of those things, but I'm here with Ben DuBose. Ben, this was just a really, really big win at a time when they needed it.
This was as much of a schedule loss on paper as you'll ever see. Night 2 of a road back-to-back against the second best team in the NBA by record. And they won without too much drama. I mean, I know when the Pistons got it to 4 in the fourth quarter, it got a little tight, but honestly, the last 2 minutes, I feel like the Rockets were 99% plus the entire time. So hard to complain about that. And to me, it goes right up there with the Denver game in December as the best wins of this entire season. And Dave, there's a clear common thread between that Nuggets game right before Christmas and tonight. And it's the look in Kevin Durant's eye. He went out there tonight just playing with a purpose. And I think it started with the way last night's game ended. The post-game interview that he did, I'm quoting from Big Sarge on Twitter. It was a lot of bullshit I was doing tonight. He took accountability. He put it on himself because of the 8 turnovers, including the one in the final minute that was just a killer when the Rockets had the ball up 2 with 50 seconds left. Lazy pass to Sengun. It led to the Maxey layup that tied the game and ultimately sent it to overtime. So just a huge flip. Kevin Durant took accountability, and you could tell tonight, not just the shots that he made, but he was getting into it with fans, with the Detroit bench, a little bit in terms of the chippiness, reminiscent of what he did with Tim Hardaway Jr. and Bruce Brown in Denver in that game I referenced a month ago. When the Rockets have this version of Kevin Durant, when he is locked in like he was tonight, they're going to win almost every time. And if you want to believe in this team in the playoffs, this is what you hang your hat on. The fact that when the games are more meaningful and more spread out, some will undoubtedly ask, well, why doesn't Kevin play like that every night? Guys, the NBA season is marathon and he's 37 years old. He's got to pick his spots. This was a spot that he picked. And if you want to buy in on the Rockets and the big picture, the idea is just get it to April, be relatively healthy, and have this version of Kevin Durant come out every second or third night when the stakes are at their highest. I'm not saying for sure that's what's going to happen, but if you want to have hope, this is where you have hope.
Yeah, I gotta say, 37-year-old, second game of back-to-back, plays almost 41 minutes. Tonight was so good. I think there was a point in the third quarter where he hit back-to-back threes, and both of them over Jalen Duren, but the second one just did that stare down, which should be a meme at this point, Ben. I really thought it was hilarious because he just really gave him a side eye as he walked went back up the floor. 11 of 19 from the field, 5 of 11 from 3, 5 of 6 from the line. Cade, there was a time where I'm just like, this dude's a cheat code. Like, he was so good tonight. Look, I know it's going to be looked at as shade at Sengun, but I noticed the NBA has an MVP ladder and they put Sengun back on it. Look, no disrespect to Sengun. He's been good. KD is the MVP of this team. Like, it's very, very clear to me that that's the best player on this team and the guy who's most responsible for their wins. And he needs to get more credit at 37 years old. He is really been a force for this team.
It showed up in the All-Star voting too. The players, I think, had KD 5th, and Sengun was basically in the just receiving votes. I want to say 32nd, basically just 1 or 2 is what that means. So you can tell based on the scouting report that regardless of the narratives that are out there, Kevin Durant, and it's deserved. This is a 15-time All-Star, about to be 16-time, former MVP that can still go out and put up 30, even on night 2 of a road back-to-back. This is one of the greatest players in the history of the game, and that's not a shot at Sengun. I just think sometimes it's easier to focus on the young guys with the Rockets because they're up and coming, and everybody wants a new narrative, a new toy to sort of push or celebrate. But Kevin Durant, even at 37 years old, it's remarkable. I mean, beyond just the shot making, think about the fitness to have his body in this shape to where he's playing, I think, top 5 in the NBA in minutes. This is night 2 of a road back-to-back. For him to have the fitness, and this wasn't just a game in which he got hot but gave it back defensively. No, he competed defensively. We saw him get into it with the Pistons all night long. Just the physical conditioning that it takes, just a special, special player, and it's not a shot at any other player on the Rockets. It's just a reminder that he is that level of player even now in year 19 at age 37.
Yeah, this is a you know, I don't want to go into that whole balance thing of, you know, the future versus win now again, but you realize this is a very special player, as you said, and there is a win now element. You can't waste this.
And someone pointed out in the chat right now, after 8 turnovers last night, tonight, 0.
Exactly.
Now,
0.
I know
turnovers.
He was close to a couple, but the point is there was a clear focus across the board, but starting with ball security.
Yeah. And just, his shot making is outrageous. You know, it's like just a weight of turning back when you need an escape or something. The offense breaks down. KD can get a shot off at any point. It's kind of crazy. We'll definitely talk more about KD. We'll go down the list a little bit here. I want to talk about Amen Thompson. Ben, I know you weren't here yesterday. You know, I was talking with Beam a Thug, David Weiner, and just really, despite the game was so negative and so much, so many negative things to talk about in that game. One thing that was really positive was Amen Thompson had 9 assists, I believe 0 turnovers up to the very last second in overtime. And was really good on ball, like drive kick to Reed, drive kick to Jabari. Like he was excellent at that. I thought we saw more of that again tonight. Yep. Amen had 7 assists, 1 turnover, and was a plus 11, had 15 points, 9 boards, 7 assists. He was really good in this game, and he doesn't get the credit because he's not a KD and he doesn't do, like, you know, he's not a Sengun. There's a difference there between those guys, but he is bringing it on both ends of the floor. And I thought Amen was terrific tonight.
And the craft and the touch that he's showing in the in-between areas. He had at least 2 shots in the 12 to 15 foot range tonight that I was stunned went in. The older men probably wouldn't have been close. And, you know, I saw them when they left his hand, I sort of recoiled, and he nailed them. He's made so much progress. The free throws reflect this as well. He hasn't come around as a 3-point shooter, but I think that's masked the fact that he has improved as an overall shooter relative to the last couple of years. And since Thanksgiving, he's been an all-star level player. I've said it before, I'll say it again. He is giving them that level of impact. And I really thought an underrated talking point from that Philadelphia game, the Rockets took him out at the 5-minute mark. I think he needed a break, but they didn't get him in until 47 seconds left when it was a 1 or 2 point game. And before that, they led by 7 or 8. I think they led by 8 when they took him out with 5 minutes left. He probably needed a break. And the Rockets had 2 timeouts go unused. And I think, I know inside the building it was noticed, and I would be surprised to make the same mistake again. I understand keeping 1 timeout because you need the ability to advance the ball in the final 10 seconds. It's important just in case. But they should have called a timeout earlier last night in the 4th quarter to get Amen back in, because they needed his defense at the point of attack on Tyrese Maxey. They also needed another ball handler on offense on a night that KD was very turnover prone. And I don't think it's a coincidence that, you know, they were so close to winning last night as well, and the game sort of unraveled in that period of the 4th quarter when Amen was on the bench. He is so impactful on both ends of the floor, and he didn't say it. I don't think he was actually interviewed last night, but I'm sure that sort of rubbed him the wrong way, that he was at the scorer's table when that game got away from the Rockets. And it looked like he played with a purpose tonight as well, to quote someone in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can talk about any of these players, KD, Amen, more. I want to just kind of go down the list as well. I want to talk about Reed Sheppard. Reed Sheppard, this is the 3rd straight game where I thought he was kind of ugly in the first half for different reasons tonight. He just couldn't make a shot. I thought there was only 1 or 2 instances where the defense was an issue in the first half, at least that I noticed. I didn't think it was that significant. But again, in that second half, he comes in and they make a run. And huge shout out to Clint Capella. He's not going to get much credit for this game. But he has been a nice pairing with Reed. As a matter of fact, I think it was late 3rd, might have been early 4th. Pretty sure it was 3rd. But there was a play where Jenkins took Reed, went at Reed baseline, seemed to beat him, and Reed couldn't block that shot, and Capella just came out of nowhere and just swatted that thing. Like, he is a great backline defender for Reed. And Reed, the funny thing is Reed was 6 of 15 tonight and 1 of 7 from 3. Nothing special. It was basically like Jabari's stat line from before. It's like flirting versus harassment right now, in my personal opinion. But he wasn't that great in that regard, but he made some really big shots, including with 2 minutes to go, a beautiful sort of hezzy where he took out Cade and then got a layup. He made, I thought, some winning plays in that second half. So huge shout out to him. It doesn't reflect in the box score. If you're looking at it, he's a -5. And like I said, the field goal attempts, quite inefficient tonight. But Reed played really well. I give him a lot of credit. And to add to this, before I kick it to you, Ben, Ime played him more in that extra clutch time stretch. And I think that was another big difference tonight.
Yeah, and someone in the chat mentioned that Ime heard the backlash and decided to play Reed more minutes. I mean, that'd be a fun narrative, but I think in reality, you didn't have Tari Eason and Dorian Finney-Smith tonight because of the back-to-back. And so I think that really limited his options. Nonetheless, I think the play he made to close out the game, that drive, that hezzy that you referenced, no one else on the Rockets can make that play, especially without Fred VanVleet. That type of handle, shot making in tight spaces, it's something that Cade and Sengun, for all of their skills, that's not really their game. That's something you need a smaller, shiftier guy. And even a men might be a little too loose with his handle right now to pull that off. And also defenders will sag off a little bit in one-on-one until he expands the range beyond 15 feet. But I think for Reed to take advantage of this opportunity, that's massive. And I also think the fact that defensively, look, this game was scary early in the fourth quarter when the Pistons cut it from 14-4, like 2 minutes in, but they closed out the game with Reed Sheppard and Alperen Şengün, and the Pistons didn't go off. I mean, they hit, they missed some threes. I guess you can point to that, but I think for this coaching staff, the fear is if you have both Reed Sheppard and Alperen Şengün on the floor in super high leverage minutes, and this is more a reflection of Şengün's recent form. I think he was better defensively at the start of this season. I think it's gotten worse for whatever reason the last few weeks. But I think with Şengün in the form that he's been in of late defensively, and Reed as young and undersized as he is, the fear from the coaching staff is, can we get away with having both of these guys on the floor in super high leverage possessions where the other team is giving it everything they have with their best players? Is it just going to be too many players to hunt? Tonight, they held up. It's not, some massive sample. It's not conclusive, but it's the second best team in the NBA on record. And so I think it's a game that you might remember at the end of the year because it's the type of game that builds confidence, not just for the players in it, but for the coaching staff as well. Like, I think because of the Tari and DFS injuries, they didn't have much of a choice tonight, but Ime Udoka allowed Reed and Şengün to close together, and it worked. I think, what was it? It was Reed, Şengün, KD, Jabari, and Josh. Or Josh a little bit, and then a men.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, Josh had a couple of really big
huge
plays.
Three.
Yeah,
Barry and Josh had 2 huge threes in the fourth quarter to push it back.
Yes, and I want to talk about Jabari as well. Well, like I said, we can hop back to any of these other players. Jabari had a terrible game shooting in the last game. I thought people clowning his defense, or I really do think that that's exaggerated. I don't really see that. I think Ime trusts him defensively. Or certainly feels comfortable with him making the right decisions. Doesn't mean he's not going to get beat from time to time. I thought he was excellent today. He played within himself, 5 of 9 from the field, just 1 of 3 from deep, missed his first 2, and then hit that one clutch one you're referring to. But 10 rebounds, had 2 steals, 2 blocks. Ben made several winning plays in the fourth quarter. I jotted a few of them down, but I could go down the list. But one of the ones that was, I thought, super impressive was, I think he had a block on one end. They went down the floor and they kicked it to Jabari cutting baseline. He went under the defense, threw a beautiful pass to cutting a Kogi who scored. And it was like, whoa, is that, Alperen Smith Jr.? Like, it was like a really, a pass you just don't see him normally make. I was really impressed with Jabari today. It wasn't like I'm not saying Jabari is the hero of the game, but I just, coming off of that performance, he made a lot of winning plays against a really, really good team.
Yeah, combined 14 rebounds, blocks, and steals. And We talked earlier today. I did a little bit of a deep dive into the data on Jabari because he's been such a lightning rod of late. And it's really interesting when you look at his month of January, when he'll be the first to tell you he should be shooting better. That's what jumps off the page. He hasn't been making shots. But when you look at how his performance impacts the team, Jabari has actually slipped much more defensively this month than offensively. So for the season overall, Jabari is number one on the Rockets in offensive rating on versus off in terms of how the team performs when he plays versus how they perform when he sits. And it's something I've had conversations dating back to previous seasons with the Rockets about Jabari, and they've noticed this as well. And they admit that it's hard to quantify because it's not like he's, a big time shot maker or an elite 3-point shooter by percentage. So it's not like he's just going out and dominating these minutes. He's averaged consistently like 12 to 15 points per game, which is okay, but nothing that jumps off the page. But I think what happens, what they would argue, and I think they're right, is that offensively, because he's respected as a shooter, because he doesn't make bad decisions, he doesn't turn the ball over, he's generally a decent passer. At least he's not going to, have the live ball turnovers that cripple you, because he's tall enough to finish at any spot on the floor and has the shooting range to conceivably do that, because he doesn't need the ball to be effective. It's not that Jabari is dominating these games offensively by any means, but he allows the other guys to win their minutes and to make plays. And so that's why, on the balance, he's really effective offensively. Now, there's some games where, like the Portland game where he was 0 of 8 in the fourth quarter. Yeah, like that's an exception to the rule. It was so off the rails that the Blazers just stopped guarding him. And so, like in that quarter, he's certainly not a productive offensive player. I'll admit that. But on the balance, he provides a lot of value offensively to the point where on-off differential, he still leads this team for the season. And even in January, when he struggled to shoot, he's still third best, trailing only KD and Sengun. But defensively, for the season overall, he's middle of the pack amongst the Rockets rotation players. In January, he is dead last. Going into tonight, the Rockets defensive rating when Jabari sits is 98. That would be by far the best in the entire NBA. When he plays, their defensive rating is 114, which is middle of the pack. So that is a massive swing, 16 points. And what I think
just this month, you're saying, right?
Just January. Yeah. And so definitely Jabari's had an underwhelming month. That's why I'm splitting off January. He's definitely underachieved, but the data shows you it's hurt the Rockets much more defensively than offensively. And I think the reason why, offensively, he provides enough value just based on the totality of his package. He doesn't make mistakes. He's respected as a shooter, yada, yada, that he still gives KD and Sengun and Reed and your top shelf offensive players opportunities to make plays. Whereas defensively, and Ime has talked about the body language, how it slipped from Jabari at times. I think when Jabari doesn't see the ball go through the net and he's in his head seeing these bricks and knowing, what's out there on social media and whatnot, I think that's when it takes a toll on his overall effort. And I think that's what's happened this month. And I think tonight what we saw from the outset, and I think KD set the tone, go out and control what you can control. He played disciplined. He played within himself. He crashed the glass. He was a shot blocker. And I think with Jabari, that's the presence you need from him. And he's just 22 years old. This isn't necessarily shocking. I mean, it happens to a lot of young players. But I just think with Jabari in specific, because he's not really much of an offensive creator, when the shots don't go in, it's easy for him to get down on himself because he doesn't really have another reliable way to score. And when he gets down on himself, you see it in the defensive metrics.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to see that as far as the team concept. I wonder how much of that is threes and things of that nature, but I'll have to take a look at that. I want to talk a little bit about Sengun as well in this game. I know people have talked about whether he's still injured. I have a hard time believing that. It's been 5 games since, he came back from the ankle injury. If he is still injured, I think he should sit. I thought tonight he was certainly efficient, 6 of 11 from the field. Certainly by his standards, 7 of 10 from the line, which is in line with his normal percentages, 70%. But this is just a really bad matchup for Sengun. I would obviously, if the Rockets are ever in a playoff series with Detroit, it's a good sign, right? But I would hate to be in a playoff matchup with this team with Sengun, frankly, lined up against those two guys. They're really good at doing the things that slow Sengun down, which is force him to pick up his dribble. He tries to bully you, and it's very tough to bully Duren and Isaiah Stewart. I thought we saw a lot of that tonight. 0 rebounds in the first half for Şengün, picked up 1 in the second half, so finished with 1 rebound, 5 turnovers to go with his 5 assists. I'm not saying Şengün was terrible today. I just did not love the overall effort against a team where the whole game, 48 minutes, is going to be super physical. I thought in that when they brought him back into the fourth quarter, they started to lose that lead a little bit. You saw some tweets about Ime, kind of going into Şengün on some sort of defensive play. I think when maybe Duren or Stewart scored over him. Again, I don't know if it's the ankle or what. He was efficient offensively, but just you weren't getting a whole lot of the things you expect from a center. This is, they put him on Ausar Thompson to start the game. He didn't guard Duren at for the most part, and was in drop a lot as well. So I would have expected, frankly, more rebounds tonight.
Yeah, I would have as well. I guess Jabari took some of them, but as far as the points about his ankle, I mean, his ankle looked just fine on the poster he had in the fourth quarter, so he was able to explode then.
Yeah.
No, to me, it's just a continuation of what we've seen really since December. I feel like when this team really struggled a month ago defensively, now by and large, with a few exceptions, they picked it back up this month, but it was Şengün not defending the paint to the level he did in October and November. And the silver lining is he's done it before. I thought last year in particular, he was very good and at times an anchor for this defense, but for whatever reason, it hasn't been there, at least not consistently, for I'd say about 6 weeks, really since early December. And the ankle might be a small component of it. I wonder more, Şengün's a guy that had a very long off season with Eurobasket and basically never shut down. Even before Eurobasket, they had a ton of training. I'm wondering if he's a guy that really needs the All-Star break and then you get to the playoffs and the games are more spread out to sort of get a second wind. Because to me, it seems like he looks like a guy who's sort of picking his spots. And I think that's more of a factor, cumulative fatigue potentially, than the ankle. I don't think he's necessarily playing hurt, so to speak, but I just, year over year, seeing the decline, seeing how he was playing this time a year ago relative to now in terms of just the intensity, the motor on a possession in, possession out basis, I've seen him embrace the physicality at times in the past. It felt like for the most part tonight, he didn't. I wonder if it's a guy who just doesn't really have his legs. And hopefully the All-Star break, we're less than a month, really just like, 2.5, 3 weeks from when they'll have over a week off. Hopefully that helps. Games are more spread out, but for whatever reason, he just doesn't seem to have the same motor right now.
Yeah. I want to talk about this comment, truthinessization or whatever is saying. And he says he wishes we were as in love with Reed's offense as we are with apparently Jabari's defense. Look, I don't know where that comes from. Because I saw some of that after, Beema and I talked last night. I do like Reed a lot. I think Reed's future is really good. I'm absolutely not anti-Reed in any way. I've been very critical of Şengün. I'm not a huge believer in Şengün. People know that. But as far as Reed's concerned, like I feel like with some of those issues that he has, the offense could be so special that it's easier to live with some of that stuff. But in Reed's case, I don't know where that comes from. I think what we're trying to talk about, or at least I have, is why Ime is, a little 1 foot in, 1 foot out at times, because there are games where it can be an issue defensively. And we're only talking about the foundation of Ime Udoka, his whole structure. If he plays one guy who's getting scorched on defense consistently, it kind of throws the whole thing out of whack. Whereas you might be able to get away with an offensive liability on the floor a little bit easier with Ime Udoka. So that's all I'm trying to point out. I believe in Reed quite a bit.
And to reiterate the stats that I read off earlier, it's defensively where Jabari has been particularly a nightmare this month. The data bears that out. So no, I'm not trying to say Jabari's been great defensively. No, the Rockets have been extremely elite this month when Jabari sits on defense and middle of the pack when he plays. Yeah. Like there could be some small sample size theater to that, but no, I'm not trying to praise Jabari's defense. It needs to be better. It was tonight. Hopefully that continues. By the way, one other point on Şengün that I want to make, I do think that not having double big, Clint Capella played very well in his minutes tonight, but Ime Udoka said earlier this week that they don't like the double big with Şengün and Capella nearly as much as they do with Şengün and Steven Adams, and the data has shown that they haven't been very good. And I think it was a 96-minute sample so far this year. I want to say the Rockets were like -7, so they haven't tried it. And the responsibilities for Sengun are a little bit different when he's the primary center as opposed to when he's playing with Steven. And Steven's typically dropping back and Alpe's playing a little bit more in space. Now, it's not as if Alpe and Steven were playing together every minute of every game until Steven got hurt a week ago. So I'm certainly not saying it's an excuse for everything. But I do think in the short term, it's a little bit of an adjustment because now when Sengun plays, he's basically the back line on most possessions. He's always the guy banging with the likes of, Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren and whoever the opposing bigs are for the other team. Whereas sometimes in the past, it was Steven in the minutes that Sengun was playing that was, putting his body through that physicality. So that is an adjustment in the short term that Sengun's going to have to go through.
Yeah. There's also something with Sengun to me that, and I talked to you about this, Ben, at the time. It's so strange to me that he does not guard Duren. I mean, it's not strange in the sense of the alley-oops and the pick and rolls. I understand what Ime's doing. I definitely get it. But it's hard for me to say, okay, this is a head-to-head matchup Sengun versus Duren, or this is a head-to-head matchup Sengun versus Wemby, when Sengun doesn't defend those players. It's just an interesting, different time. This is not a Robinson versus Akeem or Ewing versus Akeem anymore. It's a different. The NBA's changed so much.
Well, and one way you can tell that someone is not being genuine in a discussion of today's NBA is when they look at things strictly as though it's a one-on-one matchup, or I see all the time, oh, this proves somebody's not that good on defense. Well, in today's NBA, it's all about the team. There are so many switches, there's so many possessions off where teams are trying to sort of load manage their stars, so you don't see the star guarding the primary for the other team. It's all about how it works in the team construct. And then defensively, almost no one is a stopper these days on the perimeter, between how fast players are with the ball in their hands, between the lack of physicality that most officials allow. There's a reason that free throw rates continue to increase. It's all about funneling. It's about playing as a team. And sometimes, that's why I will give some benefit of the doubt to Ime Udoka, because you need to talk to coaches and players to understand fully what the assignments are on a given possession and what the scheme is, because it's not one-on-one. It's not nearly as simple as the old NBA. And so that's why, if the team is insistent that, a player is doing his job or that another one isn't, I do give, not unlimited grace, but some grace for those comments, because they know more than we do. And it's just a much more complicated game right now. It's not one-on-one. Everything is, how it functions within a team construct. And there's just a lot of information on the outside that we don't have. And you should just always keep an open mind to that. I feel like a lot of these, clips, these one-on-ones where it goes viral on Twitter, I mean, that's the main purpose for it, to just send it viral. And then, just one or two possessions clipped out of context. It's not meant to be a good faith discussion. It's meant to, it's starting with a conclusion and cherry picking evidence to backfill. And I think defense in the modern NBA is complicated enough that you need to have at least somewhat of an open mind to try and better understand what we're seeing.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because somebody had sent me, a friend, kind of more of a casual NBA fan, sent me the Vince Carter dunk over Frederick Weiss in the Olympics way back when. I can't remember when it was, but he sent me the whole clip, and I was watching it, and I was kind of thinking, these are some of the best we had, and they're moving kind of slow compared to some of the games that I see right now. And I love 80s and 90s basketball and early 2000s, so I'm not blasting any era, but it has gotten so insanely athletic. Defense is very tough. So it's a really good point. I want to give one other shout out, Jayshawn Tate tonight. I thought, with no Tari and no DFS tonight, second game of a back-to-back, both those guys resting, I thought Tate played pretty well. Just 1 of 4 from the field, nothing super special. Actually had 3 turnovers. I didn't even notice that, but I just thought he came in, hit 1 3, which was I thought pretty important early on. Just shout out to Tate, the Stay Ready group. I thought he did a good job. Next game is Memphis. I think they come home for that. None of these games are easy, so I'm not chalking this up as a W, but it is easier compared to a lot of the games they've played lately. I'm not sure who all is out. I know Edie's out. I think Morant might be. I'm not sure on that. Any thoughts on that? Because that's sort of the layup before you come home and face Wemby and the Spurs again, or you
Yeah.
stay home for that.
Yeah. I'm glad you have an extra day of rest because this week, this has been 3 heavyweight fights in a row. Certainly, San Antonio and Detroit on paper, those are really good teams, but Philadelphia with Maxey and Embiid both playing is a really good team as well, especially on the road. So you've had 3 big games in a 4-night span, and so I'm glad they have an extra day of rest. They can probably get into practice on Sunday. That would be my guess because I think this stretch took a lot out of them, but in the grand scheme, it's a good time to be a fan. Since that road trip where they went 0-3 and it felt like, the bottom was falling out, they've won 5 of 7 since, 4-1 homestand, and now, this stretch of 3 games in 4 nights, Spurs, Sixers, Pistons, 2 on the road. If you had told people a few days ago that the Rockets would go 2-1, anybody who would have turned that down is an idiot. Like, they could have gone 3-0. It'd be wonderful. But to get 2 wins out of 3 in this gauntlet of a stretch is really difficult, especially, earlier this year, they had the issues with second night of back-to-backs. They seem to have figured that out. They're playing with more intensity. So cautiously optimistic. The last homestand, they did a good job of taking care of business against teams like the Bulls, the Pelicans, the Timberwolves without Ant, the teams that they should beat on paper. And so hopefully the Grizzlies are a continuation of that. And one more comment before we close out. I see a comment in the chat, referring, I think, to our previous comments, team defense or one-on-one defense, both, because these days one-on-one defense and team defense are one and the same. I think that's, or there's a lot of overlap. I think that's what we're trying to get to. It's not as simple as it used to be because one-on-one, especially with the way the games are officiated, with how quick, especially perimeter players are, almost any defender in the league is going to be in a bad spot. It's about the interconnected nature and how all the pieces fit together. That's what we're talking about.
5 of the next 7 at home. So good setup for the Rockets. Really big win. I would have thought it would have been flipped. Last thing I'll ask you, Ben, I don't mean to keep you here, but somebody had mentioned, please refer to or talk about this because I talked about it with Bima as well yesterday. Giannis, anything deadline, anything you think or feel as we get closer to it?
I think the Jose Alvarado thing could potentially have some legs. I don't know if there's any traction on a deal, but I do think he's a type of player that they like. I think his archetype, the hard-nosed intensity that he plays with defensively, it's annoyed the Rockets at times in the past, but I think it's also something that Ime Udoka wants the Rockets to do to other teams. So if he's available for cheap, I could see the Rockets exploring something like that. But I haven't gotten any sense that anything big is in the works. I saw that comment too. Someone said Giannis. I have not heard anything inside Toyota Center that makes me think that anything like that is anywhere close. I think the Rockets, they feel like they still have a chance this season, but that they're set up to be good for a very long time. And every conversation I have, they mention the length of the window. And right now, you're set up to be a sustainable contender, which is what they've said for years, Dave. I'm sure you've had the same conversations that I have. And so anything that changes the timeline dramatically, they acquired Kevin Durant, but it didn't change the timeline. Not saying they would never change the timeline. If the price is low enough, you can't rule it out. But I still think the focus is on making this window as long as it possibly can be. And hopefully in some of those years, the bounces go your way.
Awesome. That is Ben DuBose. You can follow him on Twitter at Ben DuBose, and I believe on Blue Sky, same handle, right, Ben? And as well, you can read him on Rockets Wire at USA Today and on Clutch Fans. Ben, appreciate you doing this. We'll be back Grizzlies Monday, correct?
Yep.
All right. We will see you all again. Thanks, everybody, for the support.